Have you ever stopped to ask yourself this one question? Why do we, as men, sometimes chase so hard for a woman's attention? Only to feel invisible the more we try? Go out of your way, say all the right things, try to be the perfect guy, thinking maybe, just maybe, this time she'll finally see your worth. But the truth is brutal and rarely talked about. The more you chase, the less she sees you. The more you pour out your power, the less she respects you. And worst of all, she'll probably never tell you why. Here's what most men miss. Women don't respond to effort the way you think they do. It's not about how much you give or how available you are. What truly pulls them in, what quietly disarms their defenses, are things you're rarely taught. It's not pickup lines or clever tricks. It's not flowers, texts, or long love confessions. It's something deeper, something primal. Today we're unlocking it, not just with theories, but with 9 psychological truths that every man should know about, the hidden weaknesses in women, things that captivate them on a level they don't even consciously understand. This isn't about manipulation or trying to become someone you're not. It's about understanding the masculine energy that silently commands attention, that creates gravity without speaking a single word. The Stoics knew this well. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." But let's take it further. The quality of your presence, how you carry yourself, how you remain calm, grounded, composed, that's what shapes how women perceive you. Not your words, not your wallet, not your physical strength. So if you're ready to stop chasing and start attracting, not by force, but by presence, stay with me. Because by the end of this, you won't just understand how to flip the script. You'll become the kind of man she can't stop thinking about. It's not because you tried harder, but because you finally became undeniable. Let's get straight to it. There's one quality that draws a woman in far deeper than good looks or smooth words: emotional strength. Not physical strength, not status, but the ability to remain calm when everything around you is unraveling. Think about it. In a world where emotions can explode at any moment, where arguments ignite over the smallest things, how many men can truly stay grounded? Not many. Most get pulled into the chaos. They raise their voices. They defend themselves. They match her intensity with their own, thinking that somehow that's strength. But the truth is, when a man can stay still, when he can hold his ground without needing to argue, explain, or prove anything, something inside her shifts. It's primal. She feels it without understanding it. And suddenly, she doesn't just see you as a guy. She sees you as a man she can trust, lean into, respect. Why? Because women are emotional creatures by nature. That's not a fluke, as part of their beauty. Their emotions move like waves, rising and crashing depending on the moment. And when she's caught in that wave, she's instinctively scanning to see, can you hold me here? Not physically, but emotionally. Can you handle the storm, or will you crumble in it? Most men crumble, but you won't. Not if you learn to master yourself first. That's where Stoicism shines. The ancient Stoics taught that you have power over your mind, not outside events. That means her mood, her words, her emotional tests, they don't get to control you. Only you do. So when she's lashing out, when she's emotional, you don't mirror her. You breathe. You stay calm. You let her feel what she needs to feel. You don't argue. You don't flinch. You stand like a mountain in her storm. That doesn't mean coldness. It means presence. It means you're not afraid of her emotions. And that's rare. That's attractive. It's unforgettable. If you want to stand out, stop trying to fix her feelings. Instead, anchor yourself in your own energy. Let her feel that you're unshakable, not because you're playing a role, but because that's who you truly are. When a woman feels like she can fall apart in front of you, you remain unshaken, that's when attraction deepens in ways words can't fully explain. Imagine this. She's having an emotional moment. Maybe something triggered her. She's frustrated with life. Maybe it's something you said or didn't say. Her words come out sharp. Her tone shifts. She's testing you, whether intentionally or not. Most guys, they panic. They argue. They try to fix it. Or worse, they get emotional themselves. But the man who has cultivated real, emotional strength, he doesn't get pulled into the storm. He stays centered, breathes deeply, and lets her ride that emotional wave without trying to stop it. He doesn't need to prove anything, doesn't need to rescue her or fix her feelings. He simply is solid, grounded, calm. That's what makes her feel safe. That's what makes her attraction grow. And you become that man, your presence becomes a sanctuary. She may not even be able to explain why she feels so drawn to you. But in your silence, in your stillness, she finds relief. Because she's not looking for a hero to solve everything. She's looking for a man who doesn't crumble under pressure. So how do you build this kind of strength? First, practice emotional detachment. This isn't coldness, it's maturity. It means you let her feel what she feels without taking it personally or trying to control her response. She's allowed to be emotional. Your job isn't to match her intensity, it's to provide balance. Second, master your breath. When emotions rise, your breath is the first thing to betray you. Slow, deep breathing sends a signal to your body and to hers that everything is under control. It grounds you in the moment. Third, remind yourself constantly, her emotions are not your responsibility. Your reaction is, you're not responsible for how she feels, but you are responsible for how you respond. When you embody this mindset, something changes. You become rare. You become valuable. She starts to see you not just as someone she's dating, but as someone she can trust at a soul level. And that, my friend, is what makes her think about you when you're not around. That's what makes your presence linger even in your absence. One of the most misunderstood truths in the world of relationships is this: women are drawn to strength, not neediness. And yet so many men confuse emotional openness with emotional dependence. They believe that if they just open up more, share their struggles, express their fears, she'll finally understand and love them deeper. But in reality, that's not what creates attraction. That's what creates pressure. Here's the brutal truth. The more you lean on her emotionally, the more she feels like she has to carry you. And when she has to carry you, something inside her shifts. That feeling of feminine surrender, of admiration, of being drawn to your masculine core starts to die. This doesn't mean you can't ever share your thoughts or be vulnerable, but it does mean you must anchor yourself first. Before bringing your emotions to her, a man who constantly seeks reassurance or dumps his emotional baggage on a woman is unknowingly pushing her into the masculine role, forcing her to lead emotionally while he collapses. What she truly desires is a man who can face his darkness, process it, and still show up whole. A man who is emotionally intelligent, but not emotionally fragile. There's a big difference. Think of it like this. If you're bleeding, don't drip all over her and expect her to clean you up. Bandage yourself. Heal. Then speak from a place of reflection, not reaction. That's what makes her feel this man handles life. I can trust him. The more emotionally self-reliant you become, the more magnetic you are. You're not a burden. You're a beacon. You don't chase validation. You create safety through your emotional discipline. And here's the twist. Once she senses you don't need her emotionally, that's when she starts to want to be close to you. 'Cause now, she's not required to fix you or hold you together.
Oh.
She gets to relax into her feminine energy because she knows you've got yourself. So remember, your strength doesn't come from bottling your emotions. It comes from owning them, mastering them, and never making them her responsibility. Be the man who listens to his pain, learns from it, and grows quietly stronger, because that's the man she can't forget. There's something powerful about a man who can walk away not in anger, not in bitterness, but in calm, unwavering silence. In a world obsessed with proving points and winning arguments, silence has become a lost art. And yet, it's one of the most magnetic displays of inner strength a man can show. You see, when a woman pushes your boundaries, when she disrespects your values, when she tests how far she can go, most men either collapse into appeasement or explode in frustration. They argue, they plead, they beg, but that only gives her more control. It tells her she can move you emotionally. It tells her she owns space in your mind. But what if instead you chose silence, not as a manipulation tactic, but as a statement of power? Simply stop engaging. You stop arguing. You stop chasing. Not because you don't care, but because you care about yourself more. Because you recognize that a man who knows his worth doesn't explain it. He embodies it. And here's the beauty of this move. It confuses her emotional patterns. She's used to men reacting. She's used to men trying to fix things, explain themselves, win her back. But when you don't play that game, when you walk away peacefully, with your dignity intact, it forces her to sit with her own emotions. It makes her question everything. She starts replaying your last conversation in her mind. She wonders why you didn't argue, why you didn't fight for her approval. That stillness you left behind. It echoes louder than any words ever could. That's Stoic strength. The ability to remove your presence as a response, not as punishment, but as protection of your peace. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." You don't have to retaliate. You just have to rise. When you stop trying to be understood and start becoming undeniable, everything changes. Your silence becomes a mirror. It forces her to see her behavior clearly for perhaps the first time, and whether she comes back or not isn't the point. The point is, you've already won, because the man who can walk away peacefully is the man who has already chosen himself. There's a reason why a woman remembers the man who doesn't flinch under pressure. It's because he becomes the eye of the storm, the calm in her chaos. When her emotions are swirling, her thoughts racing, and everything feels unsteady, the man who stays present, not reactive, feels like safety. And safety in the emotional world is power. You see, a woman doesn't want you to fix her. She doesn't even want you to always understand her. What she truly desires often without even realizing it is for you to remain you, even when she's not sure who she is in the moment. That is masculinity in its highest form, being the grounding force, not the echo. Most men fail here. They personalize everything. When she's emotional, they take it as rejection. When she pulls away, they chase harder. When she questions the relationship, they start begging or demanding. But none of that brings her closer. It actually pushes her further away. Why? Because it signals emotional instability. It tells her that if she falls apart, you'll fall with her. And that is the exact opposite of what she needs. She needs to know that no matter how she feels, no matter what she says in her storm, you won't lose your center. This doesn't mean you become passive or silent. It means you become still. You listen without judgment. You breathe before responding. You don't try to control her, you master yourself. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." That applies perfectly here. Her storm is not your enemy, it's your training ground. Wave she throws your way is an invitation to deepen your composure. And here's what's beautiful. When you respond to her storm with grounded presence, she begins to trust you at a level beyond logic. It's not because you had the right words, but because you had the right energy. You didn't flinch. You didn't try to change her. You just remained. You. That kind of emotional resilience isn't just rare. It's unforgettable. It's the quiet power that makes her feel, with him, I can let go. I can surrender. Because he never does. One of the greatest marks of maturity in a man is how he responds when he feels rejected. For most, rejection triggers defensiveness, insecurity, or even rage. But for a stoic man, grounded man, it becomes a moment of clarity, not chaos. Imagine this. You show up for a woman. You give your energy, your time, your presence. And yet she pulls away. She loses interest. She doesn't reciprocate. Most men spiral here. They ask, what did I do wrong? Or worse, how can I get her back? But here's the truth. Rejection is not a reflection of your worth. It's a revelation of her perception. When you understand this, you stop trying to negotiate your value. You stop chasing clarity from someone who's already made their choice. Start choosing you. That's when you level up. The man who can walk away with his head high, who doesn't seek closure, but creates his own. That man is dangerous in the best way. Because he's unshakable. He understands that love, attention, validation, they must be freely given, never demanded. Instead of mourning the loss of someone who couldn't see his value, he reinvests that energy into himself. He builds. Heals, he grows. He becomes even more magnetic, not because he's trying to impress anyone, but because he's fully aligned with himself. And here's the twist. When a man becomes this emotionally self-sufficient, the people who once doubted him start to wonder. They feel the void his silence left behind. The absence of his attention becomes louder than any words ever could. This is not about ego. It's about sovereignty. The power to walk away without resentment. The strength to move forward without explanation. It's the courage to stay rooted in your dignity even when your heart hurts. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. Let rejection be that reminder. You're not here to convince someone to choose you. You're here to become someone who chooses himself so powerfully others either rise to meet you or get left behind. There comes a point in a man's journey where he must ask himself a hard question. Am I growing or just going in circles? We often mistake movement for progress. We fill our lives with tasks, conversations, and people. But deep down, we know when we're just distracting ourselves from the work that actually matters. And that work begins within. A man cannot rise in the world until he confronts what's been quietly dragging him down. The unhealed wounds, the constant need for approval, the habits built around numbing discomfort instead of mastering it. Inner chaos, if left unchecked, becomes the invisible force that sabotages every relationship, every opportunity, every dream. But here's the truth. What you refuse to confront will continue to control you. That's why stillness is terrifying. For most men, in the silence you meet yourself. No titles, no applause, no distractions, just raw, unfiltered reality. And if you've been avoiding your truth, that silence can feel like hell. But on the other side of that discomfort is clarity. The Stoics understood this. They didn't chase happiness. They cultivated virtue. They didn't fear discomfort. They welcomed it as the forge for greatness. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." That's the call. In a world of noise, the man who dares to go quiet, who dares to face himself fully, is the one who breaks the cycle. He begins cutting away what no longer serves him, relationships that drain, thoughts that sabotage, patterns that repeat. He doesn't do it with rage or resentment. He does it with resolve. And with each cut, he steps deeper into his own power. He doesn't chase validation. He doesn't explain his transformation. He simply becomes undeniable. And those who once ignored him feel the weight of his absence. This is your invitation. Stop spinning in circles. Step into stillness. Face your pain, your patterns, your past. Not to dwell, but to finally release. Because the man who masters his inner world becomes unstoppable in the outer one. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be honest. Honest enough to start. Honest enough to keep going. It's brave enough to let go of anything that keeps you from becoming who you were meant to be. There's a quiet kind of strength that doesn't need an audience. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand attention. It simply is. And in today's world, where so many men are busy proving, posting, and performing, the man who chooses restraint stands out. Let's be honest. Ego loves noise. It wants to be seen, validated, praised. That's why most men, when they achieve something or even when they almost achieve something, rush to broadcast it. They post it. They share it. They seek applause. But what happens when applause becomes your fuel? You become addicted to perception. You build your identity around how others see you rather than who you truly are. And the danger in that makes you fragile, because the moment they stop clapping, you start crumbling. This is where the Stoic path offers something different, something deeper. True power doesn't announce itself, doesn't beg for recognition. It simply shows up, does the work, and keeps moving. Not because no one's watching, but because it doesn't matter who is. A disciplined man keeps his goals private. He doesn't need to prove he's leveling up. He just levels up. In silence, in discipline, in the dark, when no one's watching. That's where real strength is forged. Seneca once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And one of those imagined sufferings is the fear of being unseen. But when you let go of that fear, when you release the need to be constantly validated, you gain something better. Inner peace. So, choose your silence wisely. Let your actions do the speaking. Let your growth be so real, so undeniable that one day, the same people who doubted you have no choice but to respect your discipline. Not because you asked for it, but because you earned it. In a world that glorifies loud ambition, be the quiet storm. It's the one who doesn't need to speak of his strength because he embodies it. There is a quiet revolution that begins the moment a man stops reacting and starts reflecting. When he chooses not to be swayed by fleeting emotions or temporary opinions, but instead anchors himself in discipline and direction, that's when transformation begins. We live in a world that glorifies constant motion. Everyone seems to be chasing something: money, attention, status, approval. But few stop to ask, what am I actually building, and for who? This is where the Stoic man steps apart from the crowd. He doesn't chase, he creates. Doesn't perform, he produces. His power isn't loud, but you can feel it. It's in the way he carries himself, in the way he listens more than he speaks, in the way he builds slowly but with intention. See, the real flex isn't how fast you rise, it's how deeply you're rooted. A man who lives by Stoic principles isn't emotionally numb, feels everything, but he's not enslaved by those feelings. He knows how to pause before reacting, how to observe without absorbing chaos. This emotional discipline isn't weakness, it's wisdom. The stronger you grow in character, the fewer explanations you owe. You no longer feel the need to convince others, to prove yourself, or to win fleeting arguments. The loudest proof, Epictetus said, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. And that's the ultimate aim, not to impress, but to express a life built on integrity, clarity, and quiet power. So if you're in the process of becoming, don't rush it. Don't perform for the timeline of the world. Strongest oak wasn't grown overnight. Your journey is unique. Trust its pace. Stay grounded. Stay focused. Keep cutting away what no longer serves your future self. Whether it's distractions, bad habits, shallow relationships, or internal doubts, release them with intention, because every choice you make is casting a vote for the man you're becoming. And one day when you look back, it won't be the applause that mattered. It will be the peace you built, the purpose you lived, the unwavering self-respect you earned. Not from the world, but from within. Some of the most powerful transformations happen in silence, far from the spotlight, far from applause, and often far from anyone who truly understands. This is where the real work takes place, deep within. A man who is evolving doesn't announce his every step. He doesn't post about his every breakthrough. He learns to protect his growth not because he's hiding, but because he's honoring the process. The Stoics teach us that what is sacred is often silent. When you begin healing, detaching, rebuilding your mindset, it's not something the world immediately notices, but you notice, feel it in the way you respond instead of react. You see it in the way you set boundaries without guilt. You sense it in the way you choose peace over proving a point. This quiet evolution is often misunderstood by others. Some people will question your distance, your discipline, or your decisions. Let them, because the path you're on isn't for everyone to understand. It's for you to embody. Progress doesn't always look impressive on the outside. Sometimes it looks like staying in on a Saturday night to journal instead of party. Sometimes it looks like turning your phone off to meditate. Sometimes it means letting go of someone you love because they no longer align with your highest self. None of that is glamorous, but all of it is necessary. And over time, you'll look back and realize how far you've come. Not just in material terms, but in mindset, in clarity, in emotional control. That's the real win. It's the Stoic prize. Not applause, not validation, but inner mastery. You become a man who no longer needs the world to approve of his journey. You simply keep walking it. Ironically, that very stillness, that quiet power becomes magnetic. The ones who doubted you will feel the difference not because you told them, but because your presence now speaks louder than ever. So protect your evolution. Move in silence. Let your transformation unfold without interruption. And when the time is right, the world will see not a man who tried to impress, but a man who chose to become. There is a moment in every man's life where the external noise becomes unbearable, not because it's louder than before, but because he's finally ready to hear something deeper, his own truth. When you strip away the distractions, the fake friendships, the shallow goals, what remains? Just you, standing eye to eye with the man you've been avoiding becoming. It's in this raw confrontation that real growth begins. A Stoic doesn't fear solitude. In fact, solitude is where he sharpens himself. It's not loneliness, it's refinement. Most people try to escape silence because it forces them to face their pain, their flaws, their past mistakes. But a Stoic welcomes it, because he understands that what's unexamined becomes repeated, and what's unhealed becomes projected. Can't fake this kind of growth. It's not the kind you post on social media with a filter and a caption. It's the kind you feel in your bones when you walk away from drama instead of engaging. When you say no without guilt, and you look at the person you used to be and feel respect for the man you're becoming. There's a power that comes with letting go not just of people, but of the need to be understood, liked, or praised. When you no longer need validation, you move differently. You walk into rooms with calm, not ego. You speak less, but with weight. You start attracting not what you want, but what you're aligned with. And yes, some people will misunderstand your silence. They'll call it arrogance, coldness, or distance. Let them. Because the man who has chosen inner peace doesn't explain himself. He lets his energy speak. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injustice."
You don't need to match anyone's chaos.
You don't need to lower yourself to be heard. Your stillness, your boundaries, your standards, that's your power. This path isn't easy, but it's necessary. If you're walking it now, keep going. You're not lost. You're finally shedding what you were never meant to carry. And what awaits you on the other side is not just success, sovereignty. There comes a time in a man's journey when he realizes that growth demands subtraction, not addition. It's not about collecting more people, more things, or more opinions. It's about cutting away what's not essential, what no longer serves the man he's becoming. This is the season of pruning. Some men stay stuck because they're afraid to let go of relationships that drain them, habits that numb them, or identities that no longer reflect who they are. But the truth is, the version of you that you're striving to become, he doesn't exist in the same place as your past. He's waiting for you on the other side of detachment. Stoicism teaches us that peace comes not from controlling everything, but from releasing what we cannot control. And often, the most powerful form of control is letting go. You're not cold for cutting ties with someone who disrespects your boundaries. You're not heartless for distancing yourself from people who guilt you into staying small. You're wise, because you've learned that protecting your energy is a form of self-respect, and not everyone deserves access to your growth. The more you rise, the quieter you become. It's not because you're afraid, but because you're focused. You don't need to announce every chapter. Some of your greatest breakthroughs will be silent. Some of your deepest healing will be invisible to others. And that's okay. You'll be misunderstood. That's part of the process. But let them misunderstand. Let them gossip. Let them create stories. While they talk, you evolve. Seneca wrote, "If a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable. Your clarity is your compass." And to stay on course, you must be willing to sail alone at times. So ask yourself, who are you keeping in your life out of habit, not alignment? What beliefs are you holding on to out of fear, not truth? What parts of yourself need to be released so the stronger version of you can emerge? This isn't about isolation. It's about elevation. And if you have to walk alone for a season, know that it's not loneliness, it's preparation. The solitude isn't empty. It's full of answers. There is a kind of strength that doesn't come from lifting weights or winning arguments. It comes from mastering yourself. And that mastery, like all things of value, begins within. Too often, men are taught to measure their worth by how much they earn, how many women they attract, or how loud they can be in a room. But true Stoic strength is the opposite. It's the quiet, grounded energy of a man who doesn't need to prove anything. It just is. You see it in the way he holds his silence when provoked, in the way he chooses patience over pride, in the The way he walks away from what no longer aligns with his purpose, without making a scene, without demanding recognition. This inner strength is built, not bought. It's forged through adversity, through moments of failure, through choices made. In solitude, when no one else is watching. And the man who commits to that path becomes unshakable, not because life is easier, but because he's stronger. One of the greatest advantages you'll ever have in life is composure. When you remain calm under pressure, when you refuse to act from emotion, when you prioritize principle over popularity, you separate yourself. You become rare. In a world addicted to reactions, your stillness becomes a form of power. You don't have to announce that you've changed. Just change. Let the results speak. Let your peace be the proof. Let your boundaries be the declaration of your growth. Remember, the goal is not to control others. The goal is to control yourself. Epictetus taught that we are disturbed not by events, but by the views we take of them. This is the art of detachment. Disconnection, but disciplined focus. So if you're tired of being shaken by every storm, stop building your house on sand. Build it on discipline, on clarity, on timeless values. Be the man who doesn't flinch when tested, who doesn't beg. To be chosen, who doesn't react, but responds with intention. That's the man who commands respect without asking for it. The greatest shifts in your life won't always happen in moments of celebration, but in moments of quiet decision. You won't always hear applause. You won't always feel certainty. But deep down, something will click. A realization that the life you've been tolerating is not the life you were meant to live. That's when change begins. You may not be where you want to be yet, but if you're waking up every day questioning your surroundings, rethinking your routines, challenging your habits, that's a sign you're awakening. And it's in this discomfort that your power begins to rise. Most people numb this awakening. They drown it with noise scrolling, binging, distractions, shallow relationships. Because to truly face your own transformation means letting go of comfort. And comfort, while seductive, is often the enemy of greatness. A Stoic man understands that growth comes not by accident, but by intention. You don't stumble into purpose. You carve it out of resistance. You earn it through discipline. And when you feel the urge to retreat, to go back to what was familiar, that's when you push forward the hardest. Because that's your old self clinging to survival. But you're aiming for evolution. You're not late. You're not behind. You're exactly where you need to be to begin becoming who you were always meant to be. No more waiting for the perfect moment. No more waiting for approval. No more waiting for confidence to magically appear. Courage doesn't come before action. It is born through action. So take the leap. Cut the noise. Begin the discipline. Show up when no one else does. Be consistent when it's no longer exciting. Train your mind to be stronger than your emotions. Let your habits shape your future while your mindset guards it. Marcus Aurelius didn't write for applause. He wrote to keep himself sharp. You don't need to perform. You need to persist. Because the man who walks the path of self-mastery doesn't wait for clarity. He creates it step by step, in silence, with conviction. In a world that moves fast and rewards noise, choosing to slow down and reflect becomes a radical act. But if you want peace, purpose, power, you must become intentional about what you allow into your life and what you no longer tolerate. Not everything deserves your attention. Not every voice deserves a reply. Not every emotion deserves to be acted on. A man of wisdom knows when to engage and when to simply observe. This isn't weakness. It's discipline. It's a kind of discipline that builds unshakable character. You don't rise by shouting louder. You rise by standing still when others are panicking. You rise by mastering the storms within, not blaming the storms around. The Stoics knew this. Marcus Aurelius faced war, betrayal, and lost, but never lost his center. Why? Because his peace didn't depend on the world. It depended on how he chose to think. Your energy is a currency. Stop spending it on things that steal your power. Gossip, drama, people who drain you, apologizing for your growth. These things are distractions dressed as obligations, and every time you say yes to them, you say no to yourself. Start choosing you. That doesn't mean becoming selfish. It means becoming aligned. When your actions reflect your values, you move through life lighter, clearer, freer. You don't need to convince anyone of your worth. You live it. You embody it. You become a mirror showing others what's possible when a man lives with purpose. So take inventory. What are you holding on to that's holding you back? Habits are silently sabotaging your growth. What relationships are anchored in your past, but dead in your future? Let them go. Honor them. Learn from them. But don't stay stuck in places you've outgrown just because you once felt safe there. This is your season of refinement. And refinement is not glamorous. It's quiet. It's lonely. It's you choosing the harder path, the slower path, the deeper path. But it's also the path that leads to lasting transformation. In the end, you won't remember how fast you moved, but how deeply you lived. There's a moment in every man's life when he realizes no one is coming to save him. No mentor, no relationship, no lucky break will fix what he must first confront within. And while that realization may sting, it's also the beginning of a new kind of strength. Because when you stop outsourcing responsibility, you reclaim your power. It's easy to wait for motivation, for perfect timing, or for someone to validate your effort. But growth doesn't wait. It demands that you move, even when you don't feel ready, especially when you don't feel ready. The Stoics knew this. Well, they didn't seek comfort. They trained for reality. They knew that true freedom isn't the absence of hardship, but the ability to endure it with grace. When Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He wasn't offering philosophy. He was offering a survival tool. You don't need a map. You need a direction. You don't need a crowd. You need courage. You don't need more time. You need to start using the time you have wisely. So ask yourself, what have you been postponing? What decision are you avoiding? Because it might make people uncomfortable, or because it forces you to face your own reflection? You won't always be motivated. That's why discipline matters. You won't always feel confident. That's why action must come first. And you won't always get support. That's why belief in yourself is non-negotiable. Become the kind of man who doesn't crumble in chaos, who doesn't need applause to do what's right, who builds in silence and lets results speak volumes. Not every day will feel like progress, but every day you show up, you're laying a brick. And those bricks stacked with consistency, carved by resilience, become your foundation. A strong man isn't defined by how loud he can roar, but by how well he can hold his ground when everything around him falls apart. You don't need to have it all figured out to take the first step. In fact, most powerful transformations begin in moments of confusion, not clarity. The truth is, growth doesn't come with a perfect blueprint. It comes when you're willing to move forward, even with trembling hands. Some people wait their whole lives for the right time, the right mindset, the right conditions. But what they're really doing is postponing their potential. Don't be that man. The Stoics didn't wait for the storm to pass. They trained themselves to stand still inside it. Life will test you, that's guaranteed. But how you respond is a choice. And with each challenge, you have the opportunity to become stronger, calmer, wiser. Every excuse you make is a brick in the wall separating you from who you could become. And every courageous action, no matter how small, is a crack in that wall. Keep cracking it. You may not feel ready. Do it anyway. You may be scared. Walk through the fear. You may fail. That's how you learn. Each step you take with intention builds your inner architecture, the unseen strength, the invisible frame that supports the man you're becoming. When you prioritize discipline over impulse, purpose over pleasure, and clarity over chaos, you stop being reactive and start becoming powerful. And no, not everyone will understand. Some will mock your discipline, your solitude, your silence. Let them. You're not building your life for their approval. You're building it for your peace. At the end of the day, the man who rises is not the one who had the easiest path, but the one who kept moving forward when it felt hardest. You don't need more inspiration. You need direction. And that direction comes when you finally stop waiting and start walking. One decision, one habit, one promise to yourself kept, because that's how legends are built. Sometimes the most powerful breakthroughs happen not in moments of noise, but in silence. In the stillness of the night, when there's no one to impress, no audience to applaud, just you and your thoughts. That's where truth speaks loudest. If you've ever felt like something inside you was changing, like you couldn't keep pretending everything was okay, that's not weakness. That's awakening. That's your soul knocking, asking for a deeper life. Too many men bury this signal. They drown it in routine, in distraction, in chasing validation. But a Stoic man learns to sit with it, to listen, to face it. You're not your mistakes. You're not your past. You're who you decide to become, moment by moment. That's the beauty of being human. You get to evolve. You get to rewrite your own story. And you do it not through grand declarations, but through quiet daily actions. So if you're here reading this, feeling the weight of change pressing on your chest, don't run. Don't numb it. Lean in, because that pressure you feel that's potential trying to break through, you don't need everyone to understand. You don't need 100 likes or a cheering crowd. You just need to be honest with yourself. And then have the courage to act on that honesty. Every day is a test of whether you'll fold into comfort or rise into character. World doesn't need more noise. It needs more men who are grounded, who can lead with calm, who don't need to dominate, but instead know how to hold their power in stillness. So choose to rise not loudly, not boastfully, but silently, intentionally, relentlessly. Remember, discipline is not punishment. It's a declaration, a statement that says, I refuse to waste this life. And when you live like that, you don't just change yourself. You quietly start to inspire others to rise too, because strength doesn't shout, it radiates. There's a quiet kind of power that comes from knowing you've survived everything life has thrown at you. Not just survived, but grown, transformed. And if you've ever walked through fire, you know this. The flames don't just burn, they refine. At some point, you stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this trying to teach me? That shift, that single change in mindset is what separates the ordinary from the extraordinary. Because pain, left unchecked, becomes poison. But pain, processed with wisdom, becomes fuel. It becomes purpose. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that obstacles were not interruptions, they were the way. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. That wasn't just philosophy. That was a strategy for survival. You're not meant to avoid adversity. You're meant to rise through it. Every hardship, every heartbreak, every betrayal, it all contains a lesson. But lessons don't always come wrapped in comfort. Sometimes they arrive dressed as chaos, as loneliness, as loss. And yet, those are the exact moments where men are forged. Not in applause, not in peace, but in pressure. So if you're hurting good, that means you're alive. That means you care. That means you're on the edge of something real. Now use that pain. Don't numb it. Don't bury it. Channel it. Write the book. Start the business. Hit the gym. Leave the situation. Fix your finances. End the excuses. Because no one is coming to rescue you, but you. You can rebuild everything. And when you do, not only will you rise, you'll become unshakable. Be the man who doesn't just bounce back, but who builds back better, stronger, wiser, quieter. Not because he needs revenge, but because he values his peace too much to let pain define him. Remember, it's not about what happens to you. It's about what you do with it. The more you grow, the less you need to prove. That's the quiet truth about becoming grounded. When you've done the inner work, when you've faced your own darkness, tamed your impulses, and learned to sit with discomfort, you stop performing. For the crowd, you begin to realize that most people are just noise. They don't see the hours you've spent in silence, the nights you spent rebuilding yourself, the moments you chose restraint over revenge or solitude over superficial connection, and that's okay. They're not supposed to understand your journey. You didn't become disciplined, calm, or wise to impress anyone. You became that way because chaos was exhausting and peace became a priority. This is the true essence of masculine stillness. Not silence born from fear, but silence. Forged from power. You don't need to over-explain. You don't need to argue. You don't need to chase validation. Because when you know who you are, their approval becomes irrelevant. That kind of energy? It's magnetic. It's the reason certain men can walk into a room without saying a word and still command respect. It's not arrogance, it's presence. It's the unshakable calm that comes from knowing you've already faced worse and survived. So protect your energy. Stop sharing your plans with people who haven't earned the right to hear them. Stop explaining your choices to people who wouldn't understand your vision. And most of all, stop doubting yourself just because others do. This world rewards those who stay consistent, not those who shout the loudest. The Stoic man walks forward, even when no one applauds, even when no one watches. He doesn't need permission to rise. He rises because it's who he is. Let your growth speak for itself. Let your peace be your proof. And when they wonder how you became so composed, so certain, so powerful, let them wonder, because real power doesn't need to be broadcast. It's felt. There's a moment in every man's life where he realizes that silence isn't just golden, it's strategic. It's not weakness. It's not fear, it's self-command. Because the more a man matures, the more he understands. Not every emotion deserves expression, not every thought deserves a voice, and not every battle is worth fighting. We live in a world that screams for reaction. Social media, arguments, and constant stimulation push men to respond instantly, to speak up, to clap back. But the strongest man in the room isn't the loudest. He's the most composed. A Stoic. Man knows that self-mastery begins where overreaction ends. He practices the art of restraint, not because he's passive, but because he's powerful enough to choose when to engage, and more importantly, when to walk away. You don't need to win every argument. You don't need to explain yourself to people who've already made up their minds. You don't need to spend your energy convincing those who aren't ready to understand. That's not growth. That's drain. Instead, use that energy to sharpen your mind, to fortify your values, to build a life so solid that no insult can shake you, no praise can control you. There's immense peace in not responding, in choosing your battles, in stepping back, observing, and allowing others to show their character while you maintain yours. This is what masculine stillness looks like. It's not sovereignty. It's when your emotions serve you, not rule you. When your presence speaks louder than your words, when your calm is mistaken for mystery, and your mystery makes people lean in. Let people misunderstand you. Let them talk. Let them project. Their noise doesn't define your truth. You don't owe the world a reaction. You owe yourself peace. And that, more than anything, is what makes you powerful. Because when the storm comes, and it always does, you'll be the one who stands firm and moved, unshaken and unbothered. That's not just strength. That's mastery. At some point, a man gets tired not physically, but spiritually. He grows weary of pretending, of forcing, of trying to be everything for everyone, while losing sight of himself. And in that quiet moment of exhaustion, something remarkable happens. He stops. He stops chasing people who don't value him. He stops explaining his worth to those who refuse to see it. Stops compromising his peace for temporary validation. Not because he's bitter, but because he's finally awake. This awakening is not loud. It doesn't come with fireworks or grand announcements. It arrives in silence, in stillness, in the sacred realization that peace is the real prize and not attention, not applause. The Stoics knew this truth. They taught that happiness doesn't come from getting more, but from needing less. Less chaos, less drama, less ego, more presence, more clarity, more alignment with who you truly are. So the man who once over-explained now speaks less. The man who used to prove himself now simply performs. The man who used to tolerate nonsense now protects his space like it's sacred because it is. This doesn't mean he's cold. It means he's clear. It doesn't mean he's heartless. It means his heart has endured enough to finally demand better. He learns that not every relationship deserves access. It's that not every opportunity is worth the cost. That saying no can be the most loving actus, especially when it's said to the old version of himself. And in this new way of living, he finds power not in controlling others, but in mastering himself. In walking away without drama, in letting go without rage, in moving on without the need to be understood. Because true strength isn't about forcing outcomes, it's about flowing with truth. If that means walking alone, so be it. A man at peace with himself is never truly alone. He walks with wisdom, with clarity, with the kind of power that doesn't need to be seen to be felt. That's stoic. That's strength.